Hey guys, Bryce Larson here. I just wanted to take a minute and do a video on barrels. I get the same questions over and over on the forums. It's not a bad thing. I just wanted to do a quick video talking about what we do and what we don't know about paintball barrels. The reason I'm doing this, I was talking to Casey from Stiffy the other day, and I realized that in that conversation, we have lots of good information, but it's not really, it's not conglomerated in any one place. Through our testing, we know a lot about paintball barrels, kind of general, sort of general things you can apply to any system and make some good guesses about how it's going to perform. So what I want to do is really quickly go through this. It's going to be very simple. I did a quick list. I got two lists: what we know, what we don't know. I'm going to start with what we know. We'll go into what we don't know, and we'll talk about whether those things matter and how you can decide sort of what the optimal barrel is for you. I know what it is for me. It doesn't exist, but at the end of this, I'll go through what we know and what we don't know, and I'll give you sort of the here's what I think the best barrel would be. All right, we do know about bore size. We know that overboard equals good consistency, poor efficiency. We know that paint to barrel match equals poor consistency, moderate efficiency. We know that underboard equals good consistency and good efficiency. We know that bore size has no impact on accuracy. It just doesn't. None of our tests have shown anything barrel related that has anything to do with accuracy except terrible quality barrels. And I'm not talking about like ones that don't look cool on the outside. I'm talking about barrels that you can see visible honing issues on the inside. Like you can see different finishes on the inside of the barrel, or the tribal barrel that we shot at one point where it was a painted barrel. There was actually overspray on the inside of the barrel. Until you get to that kind of manufacturing quality, accuracy isn't going to change with your barrel system. Bore size and brakes. This is going to be controversial. People still don't quite buy it, and I understand why they don't. Absolutely. It totally makes sense. Shoving a ball through a pipe smaller than that ball seems like it would break it. In our testing, and in my personal experience, and in experience of other people who have given this a shot, it does not happen. Paintballs are flexible. When we did our compression tests on paintballs, Gordon was able to get a lot of them to compress nearly 1/8 of an inch before they broke. Some very brittle paint may break, and under some conditions other paints may. If it's very brittle paint, yes, when you flex them, sometimes they're going to crack. Then there certainly is a limit to how far you can underbore. In my opinion, the limit to how far you can safely underbore is there is no barrel that's too small. A 679 Freak, a 679 Python kit. Stiffy will make a 679 barrel if you ask them to. They haven't made one for at least the 2 years that Casey's been there, but they will make a 679. I shoot a 679 on everything, and I don't break paint. I think that at some size smaller than that, you're absolutely going to have to start breaking paint. You cannot push a paintball through a drinking straw. It can't happen. But a drinking straw is only 1/4 of an inch across. Somewhere between 681, 679, 676, I don't know where that size is. It's going to depend on your paint and how brittle and how strong that shell is. Somewhere in there, it is going to start breaking more paint. I have yet to find the limit on how small you can go before you start breaking a lot of paint. 679 breaks appreciably no more paint than any other bore size that we've tested. We put a ton of balls through there. Okay, so that's the bore size. We know those things. Length. We know that on a 2-piece system that we tested, which was the Custom Products 2-piece system, the 5.5-inch control back, the 14 inch was the most efficient, followed by the 12, followed by the 16, followed by the 10, followed by the 21. Okay, so obviously best in the middle, and then they go worst towards the ends. They were a little different for the 1-pieces. The 1-pieces order was 12 was the most efficient, 10, then 14, then 16. So it seems that with a 1-piece, when it doesn't get bigger, a little shorter length is optimal. And this makes sense, because with the 2-piece, you're only looking at a 5.5-inch control bore, right? That's the only size that's that big, and then it flares out to 700 or bigger for the front half, right? So it makes sense that that front half can be longer without putting too much drag on it. On the 1-piece barrels, where it's a consistent size through the entire barrel, it looks like a slightly shorter barrel is going to be most efficient. There's not a lot of difference here. We're talking like 3 feet per second per step. So, you know, if you went from a 12 to a 16, so from a best to a worst on the 1-piece barrels that we tested, you're only going to see like a 6 foot per second change. So it's not a ton, but it was there in our testing. So saying that a 12 or a 14 inch in either one piece or two piece seems to be somewhere near the sweet spot. We don't know what the optimal length for a control bore is, but we can make an educated guess. We know that the CCM kit is not optimal because it's so short. Same thing with the the CCM kit. The Python backs are also not optimal. The custom product's 5.5 inches and the Freak is 6 inches. That is starting to get better. They increase in efficiency as you go to that, and then the 12 and 10 inch one piece are also more efficient. So we can extrapolate that the optimal control bore length is probably between 7 and 10 inches, somewhere right in there. 12 inches is probably getting a little bit on the long side, but it's possible that a control bore of 12 inches or a solid bore of 12 inches would be optimal. We know that two-piece barrels. So so that was length. Let's go with consistency. This is another way to look at the kind of the whole mess. It trends, not in all examples, but it trends that two-piece barrels are slightly more consistent. The reason that I think this is that you have the control bore back, which is 5.5 or 6 inches on the ones we tested. That's going to accelerate the paintball. Then you've got another chunk of barrel heavily ported at the front that's not touching the paintball at all, or if it is, very infrequently. That front part is sort of a buffer. You accelerate, and then you average out. You accelerate and you average out, so that the total length has acceleration portion and then some sort of smoothing out portion. That's why I think the two pieces are slightly more consistent. Very minimal, barely statistically significant, but there was something in there saying that. Okay, we know that rifle barrels are inefficient, which makes sense. They can't make a good seal with the ball. And we know that they do not provide any additional accuracy. Doesn't mean that they are any worse accuracy-wise. A rifle barrel is in effect an overboard barrel. They're the same. Now let's touch on that real quick. Overboard, underboard. Both overboard and underboard are very consistent. Pretty much equally consistent. And the reason that is that paintballs are terrible projectiles. They change shape and they change size. If you take a barrel that's huge, the ball's never going to make a good seal. It's never going to touch it. That means it's going to be consistent. It's going to come out the same time. If you take a small barrel, that ball's going to be jammed in there and it's going to squeeze the whole length of the barrel. That's why that one is consistent. If you take one that matches on a blow-through, so it sort of sticks, the next ball might fall straight through, and the one after that might jam hard in that barrel. That's why the paint-to-barrel match is the least consistent that we found in our testing. Things that we do not know. We have not measured the effect of porting on efficiency. It would make sense that the more holes that are in the barrel, the less efficient that barrel is, but we don't have any hard data on that. We don't have any data on porting and sound. Again, it makes sense that the more porting there is, the less sound signature there is. We have not tested material. Aluminum, brass, steel, carbon fiber, plastic, that kind of stuff. We have not tested those things. Alright, let's take that all together and conglomerate it into an optimal barrel. An optimal barrel is going to be efficient, consistent, in my opinion, quiet would be good, and it's going to look good and not weigh very much, right? These two right down here actually are very funny because they sort of become key. There's not a lot of change on the other ones in a lot of different barrels. So I guess what I'm going to say is, the optimal barrel about this stuff would have about a 8 to 12 inch small bore that then flares to a larger size with porting up to about 12 or 14 inches. That to me sounds like about the optimal barrel. But the reality is that if you took the worst and the best that you could possibly get here, you're only looking at about 10 or 15, 20 at the tops feet per second difference, which is an efficiency savings of like 7%. If that matters to you, go for it. I personally like to get every ounce of performance I can out of it, and I like efficiency, but it really is not terribly important. But I just wanted to get a quick video out there. Those are the things we know about paintball barrels. Hopefully this is helpful.